Thank you so much, Rebecca, for that wonderful introduction, just to connect us all. And I mean, I'm feeling incredibly centered right now, and I think that is the best place to start the second event in our series on legendary figures and archetypes in the human psyche. And I feel guided now to explain a little bit more around the thinking that has gone into this creation of a series of events. So I myself and some other members of the team have experience of my individual ego, Emily's ego, disappearing and actually being replaced by the identity of an archetype in the psyche. So whether that's represented by a historical or a mythical figure, or you know, any other identity that is not mine. And that can be a very scary experience, and I mean, completely terrifying, actually. And what has really not helped me in my journey has been the fact that the people, you know, that's classed as a health problem. And I've been sent to health professionals to deal with the panic attack that arises. And I personally, and I'm speaking for myself here because, you know, I'm the only person who can really speak for this, but I've found that the medical approach to that phenomenon, which is actually incredibly common and not discussed because it's taboo, the medical approach is not helpful. So what we really wanted to raise through this series of events is this process of identifying with archetypes in the human consciousness, particularly grandiose ones, is it a normal part of human spiritual evolution? And if it is, how can we sort of promote the discussion of different archetypes and put that into a public sphere so that it's better understood, and that people who are going through that can actually receive more appropriate support than what is offered. So everyone in the team has actually prepared something to bring to the discussion. And I'd like to move to Roelof, first of all, who is going to talk about Carl Jung and the archetypes, and also a bit about the hero's journey.
All right, thank you, Emily. So I'll be offering a short explanation about what archetypes is, just some theory to get to a picture. An archetype is an image from the beginning of time, which is found in the collective consciousness, or unconsciousness, I mean. And archetypes are innate patterns that influence an individual's experience in the real world. And Jung has done a lot of work on this, and that's now widely used in psychiatry. He has identified 12 archetypes: the ruler, creator, or artist, a sage, the innocent, the explorer, the rebel, the hero, the wizard, the jester, everyman, lover, and caregiver. And Jung described archetypal events like birth, death, separation from parents, initiation, marriage, the union of opposites. And archetypal figures are like the great mother, father, child, devil, God, wise old man, wise old woman, the trickster, and the hero. That ties into the the hero's journey as well, because we see some of those characters, we see them there. Well, the number of archetypes is limitless, but there are a few particularly notable recurring archetypal images. The chief among them being the shadow, the wise old man, the child, and the mother and her counterpart, the maiden. And lastly, the anima in man and animus in woman. And he would speak of the emergence of certain definite archetypes: the shadow, the animal, the wise old man, anima, the animus, the mother, the child, and serve to organize, direct, and inform human thought and behavior. Archetypes hold control of the human life cycle. That's why he mentioned those archetypal events earlier. As we mature, the archetypal plan unfolds through a programmed sequence, which Jung called the stages of life. And these may include being parented, initiation, courtship, marriage, and preparation for death. If I look at my life, I can say some things about that. I mean, when I was a kid, I was a real dreamer. I wasn't really interested in school, and I wasn't really interested in a lot of things. I was just in my own world. So I guess I fitted into the role of the innocent, the child. So yeah, I just did my own thing. And at a certain moment, it changed because I had to conform to society, or at least I was told I had to. But at a certain stage, and I'm still in that stage, I'm rebelling a bit against that. So now I'm taking the rebel road and trying to be the ruler of my own life. So some of those archetypes I'm just trying out and seeing how I can fit it in my life to live an authentic life, to be as close to my person and character as I can be. Then on to the hero's journey. Well, the hero's journey is to become an individual, conquer mighty forces, and battle threatening forces in the world. The hero's journey has been described, has been done research on by Joseph Campbell. He has written books about that, and it's what we see in all kinds of stories and movies and films and novels. It's about the journey of the hero, and it has some characters like the villain, the hero. Of course, the villain is the counterpart of the hero, and they are a shadow version of the hero, and their personality morphs based on the strengths and weaknesses of the hero. And whoever the main character, the villain is somehow the opposite. Then there can be a character called the Magna Mater, the Mother or Holy Virgin, which is on the positive pole, the Great Mother, which may be represented as the Holy Virgin or a female ancestor. And on the negative pole, although you should look at this, it's all perspective. It's sometimes represented as a magpie or a witch in like cartoons. The trickster role, you see that sometimes the trickster breaks the rules of the gods of nature, sometimes maliciously, but usually ultimately with positive effects. You can think of Captain Jack Sparrow in the Pirates of the Caribbean films, or Gollum in The Lord of the Rings, for instance. Then there's the sidekick who loves and supports the hero. The sidekick's main responsibility is to protect the hero. For instance, Samwise in Lord of the Rings, who protects Frodo, and Batman, he has a sidekick who's called Robin. Then we have the wise one. The wise old maybe a profound philosopher distinguished for wisdom and sound judgment. And it can be a wise older father or mother type who uses personal knowledge of people and the world to tell stories and offer guidance. Some examples of that would be Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, or Chef in South Park, or Professor Dumbledore in the Harry Potter series. The archetype is an inherited tendency of the human mind to form representations of mythological motives, representations that vary a great deal without losing their basic pattern. And that's what we see in all those stories we watch on TV. We see the films in the cinema. The archetypes fit into the hero's journey pattern, which starts off in the ordinary world. So it's normal for the hero, nothing really happening, but then there's a call to adventure. The hero is faced with something that makes him begin his adventure, and he needs to overcome a problem or a challenge, and thus it starts. But first, they refuse the call. Hero attempts to refuse the adventure because he is afraid, and then he meets the mentor. He or she meets the mentor. The hero encounters someone who can give him advice and ready him for the journey ahead. Then the first threshold is crossed. The hero leaves his ordinary world for the first time and crosses the threshold into adventure. Along come tests, allies, enemies. The hero learns the rules of this new world. During this time, he endures tests of strength of will, meets friends, and comes face to face with foes. And of course, he gets to know himself as well. Then the approach, setbacks occur, sometimes causing the hero to try a new approach or adopt new ideas. And then the ordeal, the hero experiences a major hurdle or obstacle, such as a life or death crisis. So then the reward after surviving that ordeal, the hero earns his reward or accomplishes his goal. He slays the dragon, or he rescues the princess, or he throws the ring into the mountain, into the volcano. Then the road back. Hero begins his journey back to his ordinary life. Then the resurrection hero stage. The hero faces a final test where everything is at stake and he must use everything he has learned throughout his journey. And then he returns to the homeland with the elixir knowledge, or just the knowledge that the world is safe once again, and he brings it back to the ordinary world where he applies it to help all who remain there. So that's basically it. I think all people in life go through hero journeys, but not that dramatic. We try different things, we try new things, we take steps, we fall and we learn from that, and then we move on. So it fits into life as well, but it's not as flashy as a book or film.
Thank you. And yeah, it's interesting to hear about how archetypes can be both a role and a character, and also, you know, how, you know, as you're saying, you know, during our lives we end up fulfilling lots of different roles, and yeah, how that's something that actually unites everybody. Rebecca, would you like to say some more?
thank you for sharing all of that, Rolf, and for doing that research. Where to start? So, I didn't know very much about Carl Jung prior to our series, and so I decided to take a little look and see what I could come up with as far as I've always known about Jung and the archetypes, and one thing I've been stressing is that every classically trained therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist knows about Jungian psychology and the Jungian archetypes. It's part of the mainstream education and training of high-level mental health professionals. What I learned is that in his last days of life, Carl Jung wrote Man and His Symbols, and it was all about these archetypes, and his intention was to create a body of work that was disseminated to the public, that was written in layman's terms, so that the people could have a basic grasp of human consciousness and what it is and all of the multiple dimensions of it that we really, really, truly don't understand fully, which really cannot be argued. There's no way anyone can claim that we understand the human psyche or the totality of consciousness. The best we have are our senses with which to communicate and or measure things and try to verify ideas through the material world, or translate ideas from our consciousness to the material world, which is much of what the advancement of mankind is all about, is translating consciousness to the material. I read someone's review of Carl Jung's book, Man and His Symbols, and he said, this was the last piece of work undertaken by Jung before his death in 1961. It provides a unique opportunity to assess his contribution to the life and thought of our time, for it was also his first attempt to present his life work in psychology to a non-technical public. What emerges with great clarity from the book is that Jung has done immense service, both to psychology as a science and to our general understanding of man in society, by insisting that imaginative life must be taken seriously in its own right. It's the most distinctive characteristic of human beings. And so, in short, I think the fact that this profound body of work, which is recognized for its immense transformative standings, as much as it is accepted and part of the mainstream training, as I said, the implementation of it hasn't occurred yet in terms of mental health and mental health care and how it's delivered from the practitioner to the person in the bed. So the bedside transactions that happen. We have not yet had Jung's archetypes. The gift of this body of work hasn't been translated to that point yet. And I think that's where it needs to go next.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I guess what comes up for me following from what you've said is that the lack of dissemination of Jung's theory to the layman could have been driven by sort of two main processes. The first being that investigation of archetypes and the unconscious isn't something that everybody does, and so maybe there was a lack of language or media to do that before the internet, for example. But then I think also, you know, in the villain's role, I think that people who do have access to that knowledge perhaps aren't as generous with it as they could be, because access to such valuable knowledge actually means that they can command a lot of money and power. And I would be interested in other people's thoughts on that, but that's the first thing that comes to mind for me. Now, I'm not trying to dominate the discussion, but I guess just sort of linking back to what we were saying around, is identification with archetypes a natural part of human spiritual evolution? So I guess identification with an archetype that is divine can be a really interesting way to gain self-knowledge. And I wonder if, Christina, you might want to talk about more about your experience in that area.
It wasn't just one character. What I find, and it's not just within the context of a spiritual emergence, but throughout life, we all have a tendency. Kids seem to do it so naturally with their imagination. They seem to know the hero's journey without really being aware that that's what they're doing. And we, as we grow and as we get indoctrinated with education and all these things happen in our lives, we kind of forget that wondrous gift that is the imagination. And when people go through these experiences, they experience those characters again. And those characters help transform that person into their new stage of life. In my initial experience, it wasn't just the artist scientist, it was a deity. Now I'm not fully transformed, but as I'm getting there, I'm finding myself becoming more of the sage, the healer. And I find that while they are transformational in the experiences, they are transformational in your spiritual life, because I'm not the same person I was before it happened.
Yeah, I guess, and I think you've said before that kind of you felt through your spiritual emergency that you were connected to something greater than yourself, and that memory won't be lost. You might have to speak, because I don't think everybody saw you shaking your head.
Well, it's I felt the presence of the divine energy, God, source, however every person wants to identify it. For me, it was identified as divine energy source. But that connection with the universe and feeling one with everyone and everything, and knowing that everybody can have that connection, forever changed me. I was raised Christian, and after my mom had passed, my brother and I had a conversation that ended in a falling out over what he portrayed as his knowledge of the Bible that actually wasn't there. And I got mad, and I hung up the phone and decided I was atheist for years. And then this experience happened to me, and I couldn't deny that there's a divine intelligence in the universe.
I'm muted. I guess what I love about what you're saying is that this experience that is so pathologized and feared by medicine has actually ended up being an incredibly grounding and sort of transformative, positive experience for you. And I think it's important to recognize that. And so Sheila, I'm really excited to invite you into the discussion to talk about your exploration of spirituality through a more traditional route?
Thank you, Emily. So, yes, I mean, I would like to share my personal experience and my journey about mental illness to spirituality, and how to actually find the inner peace, and to settle down all the struggles that you're dealing with. So, to just give you the gist about myself, I actually, within a span of 2 years, I ended up losing my family. And that was the worst thing that could happen to anybody. And I just didn't know how to deal with it. And I still don't know, actually. I think I still struggle dealing with the whole situation that happened. And it's very difficult. And you don't know what to do, because you can't see something like this happening, your loved ones, your own family. And that's when I felt I was all lost, and I didn't even want to live, actually. Suicidal thoughts were always there, not just thoughts. In fact, I just didn't want to live. I couldn't connect with life at all. And that's when, I thought, actually, I didn't think that then, but today when I see, because it's been so many years, so when I see, I feel that there's so much of lack of, awareness about addressing mental health issues. The way we deal with physical illness, we do not deal the same way the mental illnesses. I think they're pretty ignored, and they're pretty sidetracked, because once you talk about it, or you mention to people around you that you are depressed, you're sad, you're traumatized, you're simply tagged to be a lunatic, and you're tagged to be, isolated. So you're no longer a part of the same group, that they call. So that's how I was never introduced or told about going for any therapy or counseling, or any other form of mental health care treatment. And I am in India, so I think in India we have this stigma about mental illness. We're still not open to dealing with it. And that's how, I on my own, over these years, struggling with myself, I came across spirituality in different ways. And I was then introduced to so many different programs, different meditation programs. And just to name a few, I have attended Art of Living, I've attended Buddhism, Brahma Kumaris, and few more. But the best of all that I could connect with was Vipassana, because Vipassana was a program that actually helped me get deep inside and find that inner peace. I was then, at least I could gather some strength to face what had happened, because I was always running away from what had happened in the past, and I just didn't know how to handle the whole situation, because there was no such guided treatment, or no medication, or there was nothing, actually. I couldn't speak to anybody, because I thought talking to anybody is going to put me into that same feeling what I used to feel then. And the feelings are horrible. I think I was very angry. I was very angry about myself, about life. I couldn't connect with life, and there was a lot of negativity because of what had happened. But eventually, when I got associated with meditation and spirituality, I think things just changed. It just helped me calm down. It just helped me accept what was happening. And it just made me a different person. So I no longer am angry about anything in life. And I think it's okay. I mean, it's just a flow. And I think, like Roloff mentioned about birth and death, I mean, that's part of this whole game, this whole drama that we're playing of life. Then we have to live, then we have to die, and then again, it just goes on and on. So I think I have come to terms with it. And I think it's very, very important to spread awareness about spirituality and the power of spirituality. Because I personally have experienced, and I feel that spirituality produces qualities like compassion, love, faith, hope, sense of detachment in us. And I think once you have these, or once you're even introduced to these qualities, and then there's no looking back, then you're quite away from negativity, and you're just growing, and you're just growing in a very positive manner. So this is something that I have personally experienced, and I would really urge everyone out there suffering or dealing with any kind of trauma to actually if not mental health care, I mean, if it's not available, if the mental health treatment is not available for you, please switch on to spirituality, because that's going to help you recover, and that's going to help you get there and face all the problems in a very positive manner, and make you more strong and find yourself better. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Sheila. And can I just say, on a personal level, I feel so honoured to be part of your healing journey, because I think, you know, what we share and what a lot of us share is, you know, very deep trauma that, you know, empathy and compassion and spiritual growth is the only solution for. And just for the benefit of people watching, I'd just like to talk to you a bit about Vipassana, for people who aren't aware what it is. Would you like to summarize? Tell me what happens for you in your Vipassana practice?
Yeah, sure. So for me, I mean, I directly compare Vipassana with all the different meditation programs that I have attended. And the best part about Vipassana, what I felt was, it's actually noble silence. You know, you are quiet for 10 days, you're totally zipped, you're off social media, and you do not talk to anybody. They call it Arya Mon, which means there are no expressions. You do not share expressions with anybody, you don't look at anyone, and you're just yourself. And you do this for 10 days, you know, without anything, without any person around you, or without any social media. So that silence and the continuous practice of meditation, the whole day program that they schedule for you, helps you to not get distracted with the worldly stuff, and just be with yourself, and get deeper and deeper within yourself, and, you know, get very comfortable with the inner space, and you know, eventually deal with your own stuff and your own things, you know, whatever's been playing in your mind throughout, you know, in your life. So that's how I felt a very special connection with Vipassana, because I didn't find it distracting at all. And the most important thing, what I personally experienced, was there was no commercial connect to it. They purely believe in you know, helping the community without any personal motives. So that was something very special, and that really helped me connect well. And I think if anybody who's really struggling and is confused about, you know, so many different meditation programs that we have available in the, you know, today in the world, so you can always give it a try for Vipassana, because I have personally gained a lot out of it, and I would continue practicing it forever, I think. And every year I would like to visit and practice the 10 days noble peace, noble silence completely.
Yeah, and actually, while you were speaking, I was thinking for myself, because I mean, I hope you don't mind me sharing at this point that I did a 10-day Vipassana course, about an hour on a bus from Sheila's hometown, which is an unusual sort of coincidence. But while you were speaking about the noble silence, I guess two things. So the first is that the practice is to observe sensations in the body as a way to remove yourself from the mind. And the second is that the noble silence means that you're actually not expressing any thoughts that happen in the habitual mind. And the way that this is very helpful is, and that I found it very helpful, is that it's almost like when you've been severely traumatized in some way, there's a part of your psyche that's very angry and wants to get vengeance on everybody and everybody. But I guess because of the law of cause and effect, that ends up sort of coming back to you and causing absolute havoc. And so the power of the silence and the coming out of the mind into sensations really sort of removes that sort of psychological vengeance, and does, I agree, sort of bring a sort of sense of peace, which we have a lot of today. Yeah, so I've been talking for too long. Who would like to jump in?
I'll just share a little bit because, like Sheila, meditation is a huge part of my just daily practice now. And it's interesting because my history with it has been broken, probably much like anything. But it definitely was the tool, I believe, that was able to bring me out of very deep depression. Also brought me into a certain sense of connection or awareness, much like what Christina was talking about, the sense of feeling at one with the universe, but transversely also experiencing, you know, my own self as an individual and dealing with that duality. And just the concept of duality is quite interesting, and you can spend hours and hours thinking about it. But I think with meditation, and I've never had the privilege of doing Vipassana, but I'm very much interested in it. People have talked to me about it. I'd like to explore it some. But I use a mantra meditation as my base meditation. And I find that most of my meditation, I'm spending at least 20 minutes with my monkey mind. And, you know, that's actually a term, but it kind of speaks for itself. But for people who aren't familiar with it, it just means the chatter, the chitter, the chitta, you know, that part of you that just doesn't stop thinking and it's all over the place. And usually it is enmeshed with your most immediate circumstances, right? So you're responding in real time to various stimulus. And it's your most, the first thought that you attach to in relationship to your physical universe and that which is going on around you in the present moment. So through meditation, through whatever form you use, the idea is to come to a place where you're able to observe your monkey mind behaving and chasing these thoughts in reaction to real-time stimulus, but you're able to sort of bring it to slow it down to a vibration to where it's no longer the predominant thing happening in your consciousness. And you slow your thinking down and you get to a place of really being centered with yourself. And I was actually learning about this this other chakra that I just learned about between your heart and your solar plexus, and it's actually called the void. And it represents, they call it the seat of your soul. And it represents the part of you that existed before your energy was divided into masculine and feminine. And so it's your most pure original essence. And so even that seems like such an impossible and unfathomable concept. Who was I before I chose or was assigned a gender, let alone who was I before spirit decided it needed to split like that? And what happens just with this masculine feminine duality, it's a natural polarity that's displayed, and you know, it's our DNA, it's our structure, and so yeah, this is the first point at where individuation, that process is happening, and we're split, and the split continues, and it's quantum, and it ripples out from that original split of a man and woman, of male and female, both in human history and in our psyche, in our soul, has created a ripple effect of events and other splits in consciousness that have had to take place. And so grappling with the duality of spirit and body, or mind and spirit, it's even more than duality, right? It's multi-layered, but the material and the spirit, the physical and the non-physical, that's the human, that's the hero's journey. Where do we find ourselves within that? And meditation is a beautiful practice to quiet down our mental response, to slow it down, to slow down time, so that we can experience ourselves in other forms or realms of consciousness before we had gender, for instance. And when we do that, and we give precedence to, we give authority to this more deeper inner core true essence of ourselves, and we just create a silence so that that part of us has space to be, and we become aware of it, and we bring our attention and our focus to it, all of a sudden you have transformed your timeline. You transform not only your present moment, but you transform your future, because once you give this aspect of yourself the driver's seat, so to speak, and allow your actions to be in alignment with this, rather than in alignment with the monkey mind, which is chasing everything that is transient and temporary, and very, very busy about it. Make no mistake, once you slow down and you're aligned with who your essence is, you will inevitably make choices that will change your timeline to one that is more beneficial and enjoyable to you. Quantumly, you also change your past, because now you've changed your story. Now your story becomes the hero's journey. Now you find yourself in the place of finding the elixir, right? And returning to your ordinary world and bringing that truth back to everybody else that you meet within the ordinary world. And now you're doing what? Service to others, community service. Is this not the 12th step in every recovery program? Is a 12-step recovery program not a mirror of the hero's journey? Wherein now, instead of letting the addiction or the substance rule you, or the monkey mind rule you, or your very short-sighted present physical reality rule you, you start quieting yourself and finding out who you really are. And now you're suddenly given tools, you're given mentors, you're given allies, you're given support systems, you're given a community and a tribe. Your life is given a context, your story has a journey, and it doesn't end with that lower vibrational frequency of monkey mind or substance or addiction. Put in there whatever you want. But now you're getting in touch with who you are, your essence, and this is your spiritual practice. My meditation, most 20 minutes is spent watching the monkey mind jump around, and I get 5 minutes with my, what I call my higher self. But giving that higher self 5 minutes of attention is enough to change my direction, to change my actions, to change my timelines every day.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, thank you. There's so much that I'd like to draw out from what you've said. And yeah, I guess the first thing that actually comes up for me is this concept of selflessness that you're kind of hinting on, in terms of surrendering what the monkey mind wants to do for the higher mind. And something that I've always been interested in since my first awakening experience, which, you know, is not something that I don't think it's ever possible to forget. And I wonder, Christina, if you have the same thing, and also Sheila, and also Rulof, just around, once you get in touch with this sense of connection to all things, it's actually not possible to act in a selfish way anymore. And it's not possible, you know, in fact, if anything, you're going to sort of be of disservice to yourself by putting other people too much before yourself, and actually not taking care of your own needs. And I'm just wondering if this is something that anyone else relates to.
It's most definitely what I call my calling. You no longer have the desire to serve your ego anymore. The ego is always going to be there. I have issue with people who say, oh, when you have these extreme experiences, the ego dies. No, it doesn't. It's still there. You've just learned how to conquer it, you serving it, and it eventually serves you. But when you start quieting that monkey mind and allowing that your higher self serve, you grow that desire to want to serve other people.
Yeah, and I guess, Rebecca, you were also hinting at this idea of the holographic nature of the cosmos, and how, it's, there's a sense of potential before things become manifest. And yeah, that's really interesting. And the question is, how can we make this relevant? I guess just sort of in the last few minutes of our discussion, I'd like to throw the question out there around how we can communicate to people who aren't aware experientially of their divine self or the divine self, in order to sort of bridge that gap between people who've experienced it and people who haven't.
I'd like to just touch on something in regards to kind of maybe bridging what we started with, which was the question regarding the archetypes, specifically Jungian archetypes, the hero's journey, also with spirituality. And I think ultimately the answer to the question, if the question remains, is a personal experience with archetypes, natural and necessary part of spiritual evolution or growth. And I don't think there's one right answer. I think though that when it is happening, when someone does feel they're experiencing that, or when someone's observed to be experiencing that, when someone's observed to be in an extreme state and someone is identifying or verbalizing that, they feel that they're Jesus, or they feel that they're God, or they feel that they've reached a higher level of consciousness, or they identify with someone who's been overly persecuted, they identify as a victim, they identify or even as a villain or the shadow self. It doesn't matter. When someone's identifying with a character or an archetype that isn't their own personality, or it doesn't appear to be, I think the benefit can happen when everyone in the situation who's with that person has an open mind. If they were aware of the hero's journey and Jung's archetypes, for example, they could dive into this person's imagination and meet them where they're at and assist them on a hero's journey, therefore altering the story, making the story a hero's journey by doing that, because now you're taking command of the plot. You're no longer allowing the chaos of all the present stimulus dictate what happens. And when we meet people where they're at and we go with them into their imagination and ask these questions, what if this was a natural and necessary part of your journey? Well, the only outcome can be that it becomes a necessary, natural part of a hero's journey, right? You are writing it as it occurs. It doesn't become a hero's journey until the person becomes a hero. How do you help them do that? So by whatever means that person is experiencing these extreme states, it's almost irrelevant. What causes extreme state, it's almost irrelevant. What is relevant is that we have, by the work of Carl Jung, been shown that there is a universal collective unconsciousness, that symbols live there, that dreams live there, that we all have the ability and do tap into this. It only becomes conscious when we have a means of communicating it, and another is able to respond to that communication and experience the similar vibration. So it's through communication that we are able, that's where the therapy occurs. That's where the exchange occurs. It's where someone becomes a witness. Someone can help you see the sacred context of wherever you're at. And that's the beauty of being human, because otherwise we're all our islands, and none of us are islands, you know. So the individuation is necessary, the universal connection is necessary, but so is the community, and the tribe is necessary. And this is all we have these compartmentalized needs. But when it comes down to it, there isn't anything any one person can experience that hasn't been experienced by someone else. And it doesn't take too much imagination to meet someone where they're at and to say, this is your journey, this is your hero's journey, let me assist you, let's find what you need to do next to make this a story of victory, to make this a story of recovery, to make this a story of health and well-being.
I totally agree with that. If I look back on it, when I had my first mental breakdown, or you can call it, I see it more as a spiritual emergence. I wasn't helped in that way, and they just put you in a room and they put you on medications, and you get stimuli maybe from a TV screen that's in that room, and that's it. I was in a psych ward for a couple of months, and there was no real therapy during that time. So they first want, when you're in that state, they do not give any attention to that. So it's totally true what you're saying.
I mean, I've had similar experiences, Roelof, and I guess, you know, what's baffling to me is that it's the 21st century. This is a common occurrence, and yet psychiatry just doesn't seem to be able, maybe they don't want to learn, or maybe there isn't the you know, from a financial perspective, the resource to support people through spiritual emergence. I mean, I just I don't get it. I'm not going to get on my soapbox right now about how frustrated I feel of having been demonized by the system for 15 years, only to discover that what I really needed was a community support group of people who knew that there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just a spiritual being having a human experience. And what I've been incredibly just sort of bowled over by in terms of meeting this community of Asclepios is just how much we all understand each other, how much time we have to support each other, and you know, just how much drive we all have to discuss our experiences openly, so that other people just don't, hopefully in the future, just don't have to go through the kind of isolation and torture that we've all faced. And so yeah, I mean, I just want to say thank you, really. And I think we are coming up to the end of our time slot, so I don't know if anybody else would like to say a few words before we sign out.
I would say that it would be nice if supports who work in the system validate our experiences and allow us to play them out a little bit, rather than just shutting us down with drugs. Let us go through what we need to go through, at least for a few days, rather than just, oh no, we're going to shut you up because it's abnormal. Because it's really not.
I want to add too that I think one of the things that happens is these experiences of these extreme states are very much filled with symbols and dreams and otherworldly sort of things that we imagine, if not see or hear. And the fear of the observer, especially the mental health care workers and professionals, validating is because they're so grounded and committed to the physical present reality. They have not experienced this for themselves. When we have Carl Jung's work telling us that there is a universal unconscious wherein symbols and dreams are the rule of the day, what we have is a challenge then to view and see what this person is viewing and seeing through the language of symbols and dreams. It's not asking people to validate a third dimensional physical reality that mirrors what's happening inside of this person's consciousness. That isn't what's being asked. It's being asked, is there a message here that is relevant for this person to be able to move on to the next stage of their journey? And can we share or humor the idea that just because I can't see it or hear it doesn't mean that it isn't relevant for this person? And what universal symbols or dreams or personalities or characters might I be able to connect with if I had an open mind and was able to walk through this imaginative journey with this person and help them find, you know, what is their purpose in the now? Why are they here right now? That's the question they're asking. So it's the same disease process that we see happen with religions. When people will insist on interpreting sacred text as literally true and infallible, this creates a group psychosis because we are now ignoring the symbology of it. We are now ignoring the mythology. We're now ignoring the universal unconscious, which stores all of these things for us in a memory that we can all tap at any time. And it is otherworldly. And the problem is lost in translation from the non-ordinary to the ordinary. Well, how do we begin to make a universal translation service so that someone who's in that non-ordinary reality can again become grounded in their physical present reality and feel safe and supported? Yes, the symbols and the dreams are scary, but once we understand we're not jumping into a literal physical reality with this person, but what we're doing is we're taking a minute to try to experience them through their imagination. And we have to use our own imagination to do that. And if we do, we can get past squabbling about whether physical reality is mirroring their inner reality, because that becomes irrelevant.
Well, I'd like to say a huge thank you to everyone, and obviously we really have missed Daniel on this discussion, so yeah, we're really looking forward to joining him with us on the next event. And yeah, so watch this space, and please do comment below the video if you have any questions or you'd like to share anything that you've experienced that's related to this. And of course, share the video as well to anyone who you think it may be relevant for. So thank you so much, and I think it's over and out from us.